Actually, I'll stay on to
I was
intro
just gonna
myself. Yeah,
say
yeah.
we're not. I'm. There are no guests here, are there? Slash, are we like being
There's
watched
six
now?
people.
My
Let's
question.
see. Alan. I see Brendan. I see Banner. I
Okay.
see
So
Gleb.
Brendan can hear us. Okay. So we are
We're
we are live
live.
because I saw Brendan typing. All good. Cool. Well, welcome to those of you who have joined, and I'll kind of spare you hearing a formal introduction multiple times. Just let people trickle in. I'll get some of my setup set up, and Sung, you want to say hello while we're here?
Yeah. Hey, folks. I'm Sung. I'm a solutions engineer, just like Leo here, and then I'll be the chat moderator. And so, if you're wondering, is are my questions going to be lost in the stream of consciousness chat? The answer is no, because I'm going to address every single one while Leo's demoing here. All right.
Awesome. And for those of you wondering if this is my authentic persona, you'll notice the same vibe as when I was asking at the beginning, are we live? That was not an act. I did not know if we were live. We're getting some intros. Thanks. Thanks, Gleb, for emceeing back there, our man behind the curtain. Um, so nice representation. I am from Eugene, Oregon, I will share. So that's the home of Ducks, the U of O.
Dang, we got the whole country here. I like it. From east to west, baby.
All right, so I think we can get started in a minute. Nice to see folks trickling in. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead and share my entire screen. This will be a little informal. And the reason I'm sharing my whole screen is because I will be jumping around, and that is actually going to be, I think you'll just get a better feel for what I'm trying to share this way. Let me pull up my slideshow, and we will be ready to go. And there is a mirror. All right. So I think we're good to go. I'm just going to jump into it, and if there are any tech problems, Sung, please just join the room and stop me because I'm not going to be looking at the chat, as you know. All right. So thank you all for joining. I think to start, I can actually give you this full screen slideshow, and then I'll jump back into my desktop. Welcome to Datafold Cloud Demo Day. So we do this every few weeks. Basically, I'm going to walk through the kind of demo that I would give to someone who was considering getting started with Datafold. I'm just doing it in a larger group. Hopefully, I can get some really interesting questions and discussion going. Really just get everyone together and take some feedback, share some new features, talk to you about what we do and why I'm excited to be at Datafold, where we are bringing proactive data quality to your DBD project and beyond. So let's jump into it. I should introduce myself a little bit. My name's Leo. I actually just passed my 1 year anniversary at Datafold, so I really should be wearing a party hat. You can see some other places where I've worked and uh, other parts of my history. So yeah, I won't dwell on this slide, but here I am. Great. And then what we're covering today. So this might look like gibberish if you haven't ever thought about Datafold before. So I'll just touch on a couple high level items. At the, kind of, if you go down this list, we're moving through our pure open source offering, in particular, our integration with DBT, um, into some new functionality we built to kind of bridge our open source tooling with our cloud tooling. And so the VS Code extension has some features that you can use as a Datafold Cloud customer, as well as a free open source user. That dash dash cloud little piece of code you see there is a way you can actually run open source data diff and then materialize the results into the cloud. Diffing in CI, that fourth bullet, that's kind of the heart of what we do. It brings data diffs to your GitHub pull request. It shows you exactly what the impact on your data will be before you merge your code, before it hits production, and we catch things before an observability tool would find them, essentially. Cross-database diffing. This is something we're really excited about launching, and we're starting to see some real excitement and traction in the market as folks see the need to run data diffs, a comparison of every value between databases, so between Postgres and Snowflake, for example. Finally, one of our classic but really ever-expanding features, column-level lineage. So this will show you the full lineage up and down your data warehouse, as well as into your BI apps, including Looker, Tableau, and we're building more every day. And finally, we will take some questions, chat about anything that's been discussed in the chat. So we'll chat about the chat, and see what the best use of our time is after I've covered a formal agenda. It's my pleasure to introduce Sung, who was at the beginning of this call saying hello. You'll be seeing him later as well, both in the chat, and then at the end, he'll join us to address any questions that warrant further discussion. Also, so please keep your questions, I would say, in the chat for the purpose of this session, so Sung can kind of monitor one place, but do not let that stop you from joining Tools Datafold in the DBT community Slack. So that's kind of the easiest way for you to get in touch with us, other than booking a calendar meeting with myself or Sung. We do have spots in our calendar open from time to time. I'm kidding. We generally can make ourselves available. And so I really hope to chat with you one-on-one about your data life, essentially. It's like your dating life, but it's your data life. Okay, so I am going to roll back because I meant to have a slide that said, okay, let's jump into the demo. So I'm actually just going to escape from this. I'm going to say, let's jump into the demo. And I'm going to start with our open source DBT integration. So this is a way that you can get started with Datafold today. We've got some really easy to get up and running documentation on our website. And I'm just going to show you a couple of the ways you can start to data diff. And this will also be, for some of you, I think, your introduction to a data diff, which I will get into in a moment. I'll actually jump into that right after I run the first command, but I don't want to break my flow here for your sake and for mine. So here we are. You can see I'm in a DBT project, a simple one, but a DBT project nonetheless, in VS Code. And so what I've done is I've actually modified dimargs. I'm going to make one more modification to it. So right now I've got just FYI, the main branch is num users. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, how about this? Case when num users is greater than 2, then 2, else num users end. So I'm trying to just make a really simple code change, which might be the kind of thing you would do while updating your DBT project, opening a PR. For some reason, you want to just make all the num users 2 if it's greater than 2. And then, all other cases, it'll be 1. So what you might do next is run your build your model in development. So I'm going to I skipped a step, DBT, run. I'm going to select dim orgs. So hopefully this is looking familiar to most of you. If you don't use DBT, we will get there. And by that, I mean, we will talk about how this works outside of the DBT context. But for all viewers, just assume that you have a SQL script. It may or may not be DBT, and you want to build a staging or a development version of it. So you can see here, I've built a representation of this table in a development schema. So with data diff, what you can do is you can immediately see the data differences between development and production. Not just a checksum, not just a row count, but every single data difference. And I'll show you exactly how that works. So data diff -- dbt. So this is a Python package. I just pip install data diff. Looks like there's an update available, so that's cool. And you can see I'm running some SQL. And what have we here? This is a summary of a data diff. So I'm holding back a little. I'm really excited to share the value level data diff, which is really what got me to join Datafold when I saw a company that was building this technology and putting it at my fingertips. So let's just walk through the results before we get to the value level. Comparing DimOrgs in core, the core schema to the development schema. So imagine we've got this connected to production versus development. No rows added, no rows removed. Recall all I did was a case statement. So that's good to see. Sometimes what you want to see is no change. Sometimes what you want to see is a change. And indeed, we see 31 updated rows. And in those rows, the only value that is updated is num users. So that's pretty cool. We can see with one command the exact impact of our DBT model change or our SQL code change. Now, if you want to see the value level differences, there's a couple of ways to do that I'm going to walk through. By installing our VS Code extension, you will find the bird of Datafold on the left-hand screen, and you can actually just click Run Data Diff right here. So this is showing some previous results. I ran this before the session, and so sneak preview, this is what you'd see if there are differences between production and staging or production and PR, whatever two versions of the table you're comparing. And when this finishes running, we're about to see our first glimpse of value level differences. And this, I think, is a game changer for any data developer. And once you see it, I find it's very hard to unsee it. So this overview is basically the same information we saw in the command line output, but so you can see added rows, removed rows. There are none of those, but you can filter for those or not. And let's just walk through these results. So the primary key, which is tagged in your YAML, using a uniqueness test.
Quick thing, can you what's it called? Zoom out so we can see everything. We're not seeing the differences in clarity here.
Yes. Yeah. I will get there. It's a little bit to the right. Yeah. So I just wanted to point out the primary key, but yes, thank you. I'll definitely make sure that's visible. Yeah. So the primary keys here, I just want to call out that this is kind of the key to a lot of this, in the sense that we compare two tables based on common primary keys. We also identify any missing primary keys between tables, and then Shazam, we see the data difference, how these values change from 3 to 2, 9 to 2, 6 to 2, anything greater than 2 changed to 2, which is exactly what we would expect. But if you had any unexpected differences, this is a very powerful way to see them. Essentially, what we're doing is we're catching any changes that might exist before you decide this code is good to go. We're catching things that a DBT test would not necessarily catch, because both 3 and 2 are acceptable values. They're not null. A uniqueness test wouldn't really make sense here, but we want to see the differences. So this is kind of the first place we can see them. Now I'm going to walk through how this can really level up in Datafold Cloud, and how this can be integrated into your workflow in CI. Yeah, so I'm just gonna move along, but definitely jump in, Sung, if there's any other pressing questions or anything I'm not displaying. But this is, I'm kind of moving quickly because I'm really excited about some of this stuff that we're about to see. So datadiff -dbt -cloud. So I should note that we are starting to get into cloud features. So the VS Code extension is, to kind of give a high-level overview, the overview tab. This is fully free, fully open source. The values tab, that is where we start to be a cloud-only feature, but you can get started with it for free. I think there's a, I want to say 14-day trial. It might be 30-day for VS Code, but in any case, there's a free trial where you can like fully dig deep on the values tab and get a feel for that. So what I've done, and this is one of my favorite parts about all of this, kind of just from a nerdy infrastructure standpoint, this is fully open source, but we're using an API key so that cloud customers can unlock more functionality actually within the open source package, if that makes some sense. So we've essentially run the same diff, but added this cloud flag. What that does is it gives us the same summary, a little bit of a different style, but it allows us to open the data diff results. Let's see, is it command click, option click, in the Datafold Cloud app. So take a moment, let your eyes adjust. We just went from a dark screen to a light screen. So we see here the same summary results, but there's a little bit more to it. We are calling out any null primary keys, any duplicate primary keys, the same column with differing values, any downstream dependencies on BI assets. So that's kind of a sneak preview of what we're going to see next with CI and column level lineage. So any of these tables could be impacted, or any of these looker assets, any of these high touch models and syncs could be impacted by any change to the DBT model, DIMorgs, that we are fiddling with right now in development. And then the values tab. So this is the same view that we were looking at before, where you have the primary key and then any data differences between development and production. You can also expand it to kind of see all of that in context. There's a few other filter options. And finally, if we're just talking about the development version of testing, so we haven't really gotten to CI yet, and there's more I'm going to walk through there. But it can be really helpful to actually look at a distribution difference of the values in a column. So you can see here, one column has differences. That's the num users. It's expected. We've got some summary information, some averages, some ranges. I really like how this chart shows us not just the individual value changes, but if you had any doubt looking at those value level differences of what the pattern was, what the distribution shift was, it's absolutely clear here. All of these larger values shifted to the value 2. So somewhat trivial example, but I hope you can see that in a real world context, if all of the rows outside of a certain date had some data impact, or outside of a certain primary key range, suddenly that would become very clear with this view. I'm going to switch back to my table of contents. So let's just review what we've seen. We've seen open source data diff. We've seen the VS Code extension. And I'm guessing Sung is either dropping links in the chat, or if he's not, we'll get around to that to get started with these different kind of entry points to Datafold. Data diff DBT Cloud. So that is you should be able to find that fully from the open source integration. And then Datafold and CI. So this is often where I actually jump into a demo when we're chatting with someone who's brand new to Datafold. And they've come to us because they are managing a SQL code base. It could be DBT, it could be managed in Airflow, and they want to make sure that their SQL changes don't break production. Moreover, they want to make sure their team SQL changes don't break production. They want to make sure that they have absolute visibility into what the impact on the data will be before they hit merge. And if it's not already clear to you, I think next time I might start here, to be honest, because this is really it for me. If you're looking at these code changes, it just doesn't tell you what the data changes will be. If you think about it, and this is again why I joined Datafold. I was looking at code changes, reviewing my own work, reviewing my teammates' work, trying to use my mid-sized brain to essentially do all this math in my head to say, what is the impact on the data? Because that's the whole point of the code, right? So you have to review the code for style, for efficiency. It's a good entry point to understand what you're about to approve, or whether it's your code or someone else's. But you don't see the data impact. You might see, you might have a teammate who writes an excellent description to give you context. You might write an excellent description to give your future self context. But people are busy. It's a lot of text. You don't see the data impact before you hit merge. That I couldn't live with that in my data job. I'll touch on DBT tests and other forms of testing as well, but I don't want to, be so long-winded about this before showing you a little bit more. By the way, a shout out to my esteemed colleague Sung, who really spruced up our demo and made this even more fun to share. So I'm just rolling with his demo because why mess with a good thing? All right, so hopefully I've set some context. We've got a code change, we've got a PR. If you're on this call, I'm guessing this looks familiar to you. This might be new to you. So this is the Datafold bot, and the Datafold bot comments on your pull requests. It tells you what the data impact will be. So this is very similar to the description you saw, or rather the output you saw both in the command line output, in the VS Code experience, and even in that Datafold overview in the app that you can click to from VS Code. But it happens automatically. It happens in your pull request. So I want to call out where we have actually rolled out a pretty significant modification of how we represent these differences. And just to put it simply, we are now highlighting the differences at the top. So rather than kind of browsing through all the different things that could be different and looking for differences and maybe having emoji call them out, it's very simple. These are the differences. Everything else is the same. So you can probably hear my voice. I'm pretty excited about that because I think we're grouping by or we're pivoting on the right thing in our information design, and that's really exciting to me. So let me walk through these differences. In this particular code change, and this is a different code change from the one I was demoing, so I will reset the context a bit. We have a decrease in row count. We have 11 exclusive PKs, primary keys. So what that means is 11 primary keys that exist in production, the main branch, but not in the demos sung branch, which is the featured branch in the PR. So essentially 11 rows have gone missing. Maybe we should just say that. And no rows have been added spontaneously. So there's a difference of 11, and that kind of lines up here. And then here we see the columns that actually have differences. So the percent of rows that are different in created at and subplan, respectively. Now I'm going to expand the no differences for two reasons. One is to show you what differences would be highlighted if they existed, and because sometimes the whole point of your pull request is to make changes, and if something didn't change, you would want to see that as well. So you can see column count or column changes, any like type changes to the columns would be displayed here. This one, kind of by definition, will always be a no difference because it's the number of rows that have common primary keys. And then if these had any values, they would be real kind of red flags. 99% of the time, you don't want null, you don't want duplicate. So this is kind of an exception to like the difference versus no difference breakdown. If these had values, then we would call them out right away. All right, we're starting to see another peek at our data app dependencies functionality. And maybe we should get into that from here. I'll click on that in 1 second though. I'm gonna click on view details just to kind of close the loop on the data diff in the PR. Okay, so we've got this data diff, kind of similar to where we started in VS Code. You start with the overview. This might be enough information for you. You might say, okay, I know this is good to go based on this. You might say, ooh, this is really bad based on what I'm seeing in the PR, but there's a few reasons to go into the app. If you want more detail around the actual value changes, and you can see that here. It's a little more interesting than my first example. You have multiple columns. You can see the common primary key here. And so let me pause here. I mentioned I would touch on DBT tests and how a question I often get is, we have DBT or we have a test suite. Why do I need Datafold? We already have a lot of tests. And so I'll try to put this as simply as possible. Uh, Datafold does regression testing. We tell you when there are differences, when there are changes. So a DBT test would not catch this change. There's not a DBT test that would fail if this data changed. And it might be okay for this data to change. It might be intended, but we want you to know before you hit merge that this pull request will have an impact on the data. So I think that's really the key. We want you to have visibility into stuff that might be caught by anomaly detection in production, but then it's already in production. And we want that information to be in front of you before you make the decision that, yes, it's okay for this to be in production. I would welcome any speculation on, is there a DBT test that would catch a slight difference in a timestamp or, a change from one accepted value to another accepted value? At the end of the day, a DBT test and many tests that you might have in place are assertion tests. They are going to say, they have to state in advance whether something should be true. But we can't say, if my name changed from Leo to Leon in the database, there's not going to be a test that says Leo's name must be Leo if you have a million rows with 1,000 or 100,000 different names. So that's kind of the premise here. I also want to call out, if you look at this column profiles tab, which has some helpful information I mentioned earlier, how it could actually really unlock some insights around the distribution. And you can see another example of that here, where the distribution shifts. That being said, you have min, max, maybe a sum. That might be like a checksum that you might be doing today, kind of an ad hoc sum of an important column of an important table. What that does not catch is if the values switch. So if row 2 and row 3 were 76 and 74 respectively, and they swapped. So that might not seem like super likely, but if this is a critical table and you really can't afford a mistake, then the only way to really know that is to make sure that that column where you expect no changes does not appear in your pull request in the Datafold printout. So I said I would be concise. I'm not sure I delivered on that promise, but I hope that made some sense. And I also, so I will move on and just call out a couple more basics about the CI experience. So you'll notice tables modified in this pull request, just like a DBT Slim CI job, we will diff the tables that are modified, and if you so choose, the downstreams. So in this demo, we see what it looks like if you choose not to diff the downstreams. And for some orgs that don't want to kick off diffs of 100 or more downstreams on a regular basis, that is the way to go. And then you can kind of diff them manually or in bulk in a batch by adding a label. And if you add that label, or if you have this configured upfront, then you would see the same thing, but diffs of downstreams. This is important because these tables didn't have a single code change. And so it's hard enough to look at the code in a git diff and say there's going to be a data impact. But, beyond that, knowing what all the downstreams are and what all the data impacts could be on models or SQL files that don't even have a code change, that's not something I think I could do. And to have that just right in front of me in the pull request, again, I just don't feel like I could do my job well without it, to be honest. Okay, so I see in this demo pull request, we're now moving into column level lineage. I won't spend as long on this. I do want to leave time for questions at the end. So let me just do a quick time check. Yes, so before I get to column level lineage, I am going to touch on something I'm really excited about. And like I mentioned, we're shipping to customers today. It is cross-database diffing for migration and replication in Datafold Cloud. So I will put this visual in front of you. Take a breath. I will take a breath and kind of just let you take a look at this, see if it feels like it resonates. nearly everyone I talk to is moving data from one database to another, whether that's in the context of a replication or a migration. So again, I'm kind of zooming us out or yanking us out of the CI discussion, my rapid fire demo of editing SQL and opening a pull request. And we'll get back to any questions about that. But what I want to introduce here is actually a very different context of where you would want to data diff, where you would want to use the same core technology to compare data between different data tables to make sure that you're able to do an excellent job at your job, essentially. And so there's two kind of key concepts here, or rather key use cases here. Replication, so that would be your Fivetran, your Airbyte, Meltano, however you're moving data from your source to your target. In this example, you've got the elephant of Postgres. Let's say that's your production replica database or your production database even that gets replicated to Snowflake. You want to make sure that's happening and that you're not missing values, or if you are missing values, if you have corrupted values, if you're expecting to be missing values because of a lag, but you want to make sure that amount does not exceed the expected range of missing values, right? So essentially what we're building, and we're hooking folks up today, and we'd love to chat if this is of interest to you to kind of validate that your systems are running smoothly, that you can wake up, sip your coffee, say, my data has moved, and Datafold has made sure I know if there's a problem. That's what we want to talk to you about. And yeah, really shape this kind of new direction we're taking the company and the product in, and evolve that with you to meet your use case. So you can see here we've got Postgres and Snowflake, but we are working with all of our classic database connectors as well as more. Let's see. So a couple that we're working with folks right now on include Oracle, Databricks, Redshift, of course, and BigQuery. So a lot of familiar ones. We're also looking at support for non-relational databases such as MongoDB. And so I can't say an exact timeline, but that is very much in the works. We've got folks researching that today, and we ship stuff pretty fast around here. So if that is of interest, please let us know. All right, so this is a little small. Here, let me go back into the slideshow. But basically, I just wanted to put together an example workflow where you might see this cross-database diffing in an Airflow context. So essentially, you have an Airflow DAG that triggers let's say it triggers a replication, or maybe this is a DAG that you've actually built to support a larger scale migration. So I walked through kind of the ETL use case, but let's talk about migrations a little bit. You might be moving from Oracle to Snowflake, from Redshift to BigQuery, and you want to declare that migration a success. You want to get your stakeholders to sign off and say, the migration is done. Let's have a party about it. And most importantly, we're going to shut off the old system. And until that old system is shut off, people are going to keep using it. So that's where we want to automate the process of giving yourself and your stakeholders absolute clarity that it is time to declare the migration complete. I should mention that might also involve migrating from a legacy script to DBT, from Airflow to Dagster, whatever it may be. The point is, with Datafold, you can validate that the data in one system matches the data in the other. So I hope that the CI use case that I walked through earlier kind of helps to paint a picture in your mind about how that works in CI, but also how that is going to work in this context as well. So we've got some of this up and running locally. This is a little proof of concept I built. And basically what it does is it validates that our Postgres to Snowflake replication is working. And I can look at this and I can say, I see a couple of discrepancies. Usually they match exactly. I picked this example because there were a couple of discrepancies. I dug into it. This is our replication validation script. and I saw that there were a couple of differing values, but they were okay. They were, updates essentially in the production database that hadn't made it to Snowflake yet. So I pulled this up really just because the truth is everyone's data stack is going to be quite different. This little email pretty much works for us at our little company. But in Datafold Cloud, we do have scheduling capability, notifications, and kind of monitors of your recurring diffs so that you can essentially set your cross-database diffs on a schedule and get notified of the results. And importantly, get linked back to those results within Datafold Cloud so you can share them with your stakeholders so they can see the pretty UI, they can click on the link and kind of explore themselves. And yeah, let me show you. I guess last word I wanna offer on the cross database diffing piece, and then I'll jump into lineage, and then we'll open it up. So the last word on cross database diffing is just a little demo of what that looks like. Pull up the right window in the context of a Python script. And this is a Python script that you might add to your any part of your pipeline. So what I'm going to do is trigger this diff. So I know this is like a lot of code to be kind of throwing up in front of you, but I can make it pretty clear, I hope. I'm just triggering the XDB same function. So this is going to diff two tables that have no differences.
Leo, real quick, can you zoom out again a little bit?
Yes.
All right,
How's
perfect.
that? Better?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. I'm always conscious of displaying the tiny text, so that's helpful to know this is good. Okay, so here we are, XDB same. So I want to be clear. I'm no expert on Python. I had a little bit of help putting this together from Song and others, but each of these functions, it's pretty simple. So essentially what we're doing is we're specifying the table. We are specifying the data source within Datafold, and we're saying show me the results. So let me just I'm going to kick this off live, as it's always exciting to do that in a demo, isn't it? So XDB same, and I will also show you, by the way, how this can be kicked off in the Datafold UI. But I wanted you to see the programmatic interface because even though it's like a little hard to show in a demo, I think likely this is where you'd want to add this to your Airflow pipeline if this is of interest to you, or out of the box schedule with Datafold Cloud. So this is, I think, over 1 million rows cross database. So it does take a few seconds, but we're pretty pleased with the performance here. And as you saw, it is done. So there's a whole JSON response. If you're doing everything through infrastructure and orchestration, then you would look at that. But what I'm going to do is click on the link. I'm just going to copy paste the link and to open that up here. So really what I'm trying to show off here, and this is really cool tech, to be honest, is that we're essentially doing the same thing that you might do by like writing a complex join within a database to compare two tables, but we're doing it between databases. So you can't do that with SQL, at least not directly. And as you can see here, we validated in just a couple of seconds that these two tables are identical. Rows with distinct PKs. The number matches exactly. It's 1.2 million, and there's absolutely no differences. So I'm going to run one more of these. If you'll indulge me, some more VS Code time, and this is going to run as well. That one was even faster. So let me just scroll back up to the link. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, it's the same principle, at Datafold. Essentially everything we do revolves around data diff, but to be able to do this in both CI and in more of this kind of orchestration infrastructure quality context, if you can call it that. Cross-database diffing to validate migrations and replications is, I think, what it says on the slide. Here you can see kind of the counterexample where you've got 4 differing rows. You've got 2 primary keys that exist in Snowflake, but not Postgres. And just like we saw in the previous version, we can actually see the primary keys, the event IDs that exist in Snowflake, but not Postgres. And over here, you can see the data differences. And all 4 of these went from having a value to being null. So I hope this is as exciting to you as it is to me. To get this in your system to, to alert you if your replication is not working as expected, to get way ahead of issues that could impact production in your ETL pipeline, or to get that sign off on your migration is really what we're trying to help with here, and what is an exciting new development for Datafold. And finally, these demos are getting longer because there's more stuff to share. I swear I'm not getting slower. I'm going to just do a quick walkthrough of our column level lineage. Let me check our table of contents. Yes, that is next. So column level lineage, one of the things we're really proud of, it really levels up one's ability to see what's going on in your data warehouse. So I'm going to call out a couple of things here. So we can see in this dimorgs table that I was updating earlier, num users has no downstream dependencies. So why does that matter? Well, you might remember num users was one of the columns that I edited in my development workflow. Well, I just need to pop into Datafold. Like, it's great that I could see the, let me go back to exit selected path mode. Yeah, so now I'm going to go back to the full table. It's great that I could see the impact of num users on the downstreams in the pull request. But by looking at column level lineage, I can see there's nothing. And so in this code change that we were looking at, where we saw, dimorgs was edited, created at and subplan were edited, that's a different story. And that's why we saw those downstream impacts, because subplan has downstream impacts on org ID, on usage, and what was the other one? I think created at has impacts on the same. So the idea here is that your stakeholders, your team members, your BI developers can see all of the dependencies up and down the DAG on a column level. I want to call out that using table level lineage, it would appear that num users well, rather, I should rephrase that. There would be no way of knowing whether num users in particular had an impact on downstream. So that's the kind of granular insight we're trying to provide here. Let's see. Yes, so I think I might as well jump right into the final note, which is something we shipped really recently and is connected to Lineage, which is our Looker integration. So we do integrate with high touch mode, Looker, and Tableau is shipping very shortly. So we're just gonna, and essentially, if you're looking to use Tableau, we should just talk now because it'll be ready to go when you're ready to go. But I want to highlight this Looker aspect of our lineage. So essentially, what this is doing is it's allowing you to navigate your DAG up and down to see how Snowflake or your data warehouse in general connects to Looker or any of your downstream BI apps. So you can see on the column level, what the impacts are. By the way, these little tails, that shows you that this column actually has other downstreams. The reason they're not shown here is because every time you look at Datafold lineage, it focuses on an individual node. So if we focus on this node, we'll see, and switch to downstream, we'll see there are two downstreams, and there's one snowflake table, there's one looker view. So I hope that makes some sense. I just wanted to explain the tails a little bit. Yeah, so essentially what you're getting here is if you use DBT, your whole DBT project will be represented just like your DBT DAG, but with column level lineage. In addition to that, you'll see any other data warehouse asset, or you'll be able to search for and find. So as I mentioned, we're focusing on an individual node. I kind of like that. It makes it sort of like a video game that you move up and down. You see these tails because we're focused on this node. So if we switch to this node, then we can see all those upstreams. So hope that makes a little bit of sense. Yeah, so as I was saying, you can move to downstreams. Yeah, so you can kind of get the idea. I spend all day clicking through this thing. So you can see your DBT project if you have one. You can see anything else in your Snowflake data warehouse if you don't have a DBT project, or if you do. So that's important because you might have some unmanaged asset that depends on your DBT project, or your DBT project depends on that someone created, and it's totally like unmanaged, and you're trying to keep your warehouse organized, and having that information is really critical, or having that visibility. Furthermore, if you want to make a change to a DBT model and you want to know what downstream assets are dependent on it. So you can see here, there's one or two looker views, in this case one, but probably for this demo, I should create like 1,000 looker views, looks, explores that 100 or even a few people have created depending on these tables. And before you make a change, you want to know which columns are going into which assets, looker and mode and Tableau. And that is why it also is displayed in the PR. So essentially we're trying to tie together all these disparate elements everyone's working on. They're kind of connected, well, they're very connected, but they're not always connected in terms of process. And I hope that what I'm threading together here shows you a really cohesive picture where, as you're using Datafold Cloud, you will feel a sense of order. You'll feel confidence as you make changes and manage and evolve your environment. And you can empower yourself and others to not be afraid of breaking stuff, to not be explaining why the numbers changed, or not seeing costs rise as assets, warehouses, BI instances become unmanageable. Yeah, I think I'll kind of wrap down my solo part of this, and invite Sung to join the stage and maybe help guide the rest of this chat based on anything that's been going on in the chat. I'm going to change this to AKA chat about the chat.
All right. Hey, what's up, y'all?
Thanks for joining. It's good to have company in here.
Yeah, for sure. I know I've answered all the questions so far, and so we can just treat this like a fireside chat. You can just flood us with your questions, and we're going to answer every single one of them along the way, just to make sure you get the most value out of talking with us. And so, yeah, I'll let you folks marinate in that and let us know.
Yeah, and while folks think about if there's anything we should cover, is there anything in particular, Sung, that you got to chat with people about that you can share with me?
Yeah, someone named Maria, they asked about just debugging VS Code functionality, and so we're gonna evolve that conversation in the DBT public Slack under the tools-datafold channel. And I know some people were really piqued about what's open source versus cloud. Resolved some of that when it came to like column level lineage. Well, I know Brendan, you recently asked, like, will it alert if changes will break LookML? And the answer is no. It's really about understanding the impact of your PR code changes to overall Looker objects. But if you click on the hyperlinks, it'll show you the lookml for that relevant object, so you know exactly how it's going to impact things.
Yeah, I want to touch on that as well. So that does come up pretty frequently, and what I would say is there's two really different important use cases here. One is knowing if your lookml will break, as in it'll generate malformed code essentially that can't run. That's not what we're focused on. There are tools for that. Who knows, maybe we could come up with something in that department. But what we saw a real gap in was even just knowing what was downstream. So what we're trying to avoid is a situation where some kind of like code checker says your code will run, but all the numbers will be wrong. And so it's a little more challenging to, we can't run a data diff on a look in the same way because it's not deterministic. But what we can do is tell you, listen, you're about to merge changes to this DBT model, and there are 5 looks or 5 dashboards that depend on it. And do any of these names, seem significant to you? Are these like the core dashboards that your finance team looks at? So it does require some organizational context. And one thing we're looking at shipping in the next version of this, because what I just described was like really in demand, and we've gotten some really exciting feedback about it so far. But the next version is going to be actually highlight when a column to attribute link is broken. So let's say you remove a column from a DBT model, and that actually is depended on by an asset in Looker or Tableau or Mode. So definitely thinking about how we can get more into the kind of breaking changes space.
Okay, beautiful. Satvik, I just saw your question. Curious about the development process. Do we want to trigger a diff on every commit or before the review? So we've seen both.
Good question.
If you're probably thinking like, hey, I want to make a draft pull request and it's probably 10 commits before it's ready for review. I don't want to, waste a bunch of, time, energy, and money waiting for Datafold to run. What's really nice is you can just set it in a setting within Datafold itself to say, hey, only when you add the Datafold kind of label to your PR, that's when it actually officially kicks it off. Similar to what Leo was demonstrating with diff all downstream, you can do it for Datafold as a whole. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there's all different ways you can kind of have this in your workflow. We have suggestions, but there's not necessarily a right way.
Yeah.
Aaron is asking a spicy question about Mode and ThoughtSpot, and basically the answer is Mode integration is unchanged or works just as it always did. But we're definitely excited about the possibility of working more closely with ThoughtSpot, and maybe you could say we already are, since we're working with Mode on that integration. And the Mode integration, just I didn't display it, but just so you know, it essentially works the same as what we saw in Looker. It pops up in the pull request, and you see it in column level lineage. Yeah, and thank you, Satvik, for that comment, and Aaron for the question. Maybe it would be, we don't always have to ask for constructive criticism, but I will now. I'm wondering if there are any gaps that you are looking for us to fill that maybe I haven't touched on, or parts of what I showed you that you think, oh, that's pretty good, but what if it did that? I can't promise everything, but I think we are very actively developing some of these products and features, especially the new ones. As I mentioned, just refresh the CI printout. Cross-database diffing is up and running, so come at us with your requests or your suggestions. And while you're thinking about that, also love to hear anything that really resonated. I know that's probably been chatted about already, but if there's even just like one word or one piece of this demo that was it for you, that like made you stay, because I know your time is valuable, that would be really helpful to know, just so I know what you care about.
I'm gonna post a scheduling link in the chat if you want to talk more in depth with Leo or myself in more detail. I'm gonna post that there, and then we can evolve the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Satvik, I'm glad to hear you're interested in the cloud offering. As far as costs for running diffs, it's very hard to say absolutely. Well, it's kind of impossible to say absolutely. It'll depend on your warehouse instance, for example, in Snowflake would depend on, yeah, your warehouse size and so on. But a general rule of thumb is that running a diff is going to be a similar order of magnitude, if not less than actually building the table in a staging environment. So if you're using dbt or if you're using Airflow to build staging, Dagster, what have you, then there's some outlay in terms of building that staging environment, and there would be a degree more to run the data disk, but it would not be like a 10x increase. So essentially, you could see some increase from Datafold, but our hope is that by using tools like I showed you Slim Diff, by using Slim CI in dbt, and perhaps most of all, by avoiding ad hoc queries and kind of repeated work, failed production jobs, I think that you could potentially even see decreased Snowflake bills by exploring some of this tooling. I'll finally note that with nearly all of our customers, we do advise on CI setup and the like, because the last thing we want is to introduce tooling that increases cost.
Yeah. And to extend that, I have yet to hear complaints from customers on the front lines about us
That
blowing
is
up
true. Yeah.
Snowflake up. And part of that is because let's think about how many fire drills Datafold has prevented as a whole, right? Where it's like, oh, hey, like because Datafold is in place, I prevented 3 reruns of a prod pipeline for like some very easily preventable fixes that Datafold caught, right?
Or even 3 reruns of a development pipeline.
Yeah.
You have you have a developer who is, if you go back to the beginning of the demo, let's say you even before you open a PR, you run something in development, um, and then you catch something before opening the PR, triggering all of CI. So yeah, a lot to think about. Definitely not like um, it's one of those things where we can provide assurance and we can stand behind what we're saying here, but it all depends on your context. Hopefully it's a matter of we will save you even more money if we can get things set up perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, and like that's part of the charm of why I joined Datafold. Just some context: I was at DPT Labs for like 2+ years, doing a very similar role to what I'm doing now, and I would even hear Datafold, and even just the understanding of like, hey, like, can I understand the before and after story of my DPT code changes, so I'm not playing guessing games, and it was just cool to see Datafold's already solving that problem pretty well. But
Yeah.
before we end, I know I sent the link there, but Leo, can you put up the QR code just so if people
Uh,
are on mobile or seeing this in the background, they can easily, get our link and schedule time with us.
yes, I will. So we'll close out with the QR code. I want to share. So we heard a little of Sung's origin story. I want to share that when I was looking at joining Datafold or thinking about Datafold, or learning for the first time over a year and a half ago, probably. Is that visible enough? Make this a little
Yes.
bigger. I'll just zoom in a little. There we go. Oh yes, actually, I should call out. Yeah, this QR code will allow you to get started for free. This is another thing that is like here, there we go. Is like really, really exciting actually about our onboarding process. So onboarding, not the sexiest topic, but basically today you can sign up, connect to data source, get I believe, a 14-day free trial, run data diffs. the whole shebang. And so I definitely encourage you to do that. Reach out to us if you are, so we can just get a conversation started and we can help you have a good experience. Um, and Sung's got a good video for getting started right there. Yeah. Last word, I suppose. Could have started with this, but wanted to get into the tool. I joined Datafold because I was on a data team, and I didn't know if my code changes were good before I hit merge. Full stop. I'd run some ad hoc SQL. I'd, do my best to compare staging to prod and like catch data errors. I wanted to be able to say to my teammates, to my manager, to everyone, I've already run a data diff. I know that this is I'm refactoring, making the code more efficient, for example, and it won't impact the data. So you don't need to worry about it. And so that's kind of the experience that this company is building or has built already and is evolving on. And when I heard about it, I thought I have to be a part of this. So we're over time, talked a lot. Thank you all for joining and for your good questions and your engagement. And Satvik has asked a really good question, which I'm not going to dive into too much right now, what's in store for the future. But I think I'll just say we're really leaning into some of the things I mentioned, more BI app integrations, more richer support and infrastructure, cloud support around cross-database diffing. And finally, or at least off the top of my head, finally, non-relational database diffing. We get a lot of requests for, Mongo to Snowflake, for example. And we don't support that today, but we are really looking forward to rolling that out. So yeah, let's wrap up here. Let's keep the chat going either over Calendly in the Slack. And thank you all for joining. This has been a great start to my morning.
All right. Beautiful. Peace out, y'all. Bye.